At 7:02 on the 28th of March. Let's go around the table for attendance. Say your name, Howard. Did you start?
Sure. Howard D'Amico.
Ryan Hogan.
Sandy Kuipers.
Carol Gogolinsky.
Dick Vandenberg.
Lynn Mazzulli.
Hannah Morin.
Michael Lutnick.
Okay, welcome. So everybody have their agenda handy?
Yes.
We're not going to have capital improvement tonight. We're going to try to do that on the 11th. Because there are some numbers that they're still waiting. So Board of Health, you guys are up. You want to talk from there or come to our empty space at the end of the day?
We can talk from here.
Okay. So just give us an overview of what's going on in your department and any financial issues you think we should know of when you made your budget.
The only financial change, I guess, other than what Matt has increased, is monitor wells.
Okay.
Needs to be increased by $1,000 because lab fees and the water samplers increased.
So did you tell Matt that? I mean, when you did your budget, did you include that increase?
I emailed him on it.
Okay.
I just found out this week.
So as you were working on your budget with that 1% limit, what was the biggest problem you had making that new budget, would you say?
I pretty much kept it the way he did it. I
Okay.
think we're gonna be okay this year with it.
Okay.
Just be careful.
And going forward, what keeps you up at night, Board of Health wise?
Board of Health wise?
Yeah.
Regulations, one
Okay.
thing. Just
Okay.
things that things that have been created a long time ago really need updating. And that's one thing that we really need to work on, I believe.
Can you give an example?
Well regulations, water quality, animal regulations. That's all something that we really need to look at. We don't have any animal regulations at this time, but we do have two inspectors that we have through a collaborative,
Okay.
and they work with 8 towns around us. So we do have them for 3 years. I think they're up, about 2.5 years left, 2 years left. And because they work with the other towns, now's the time to use them to grab information from other towns that seem to be working for them. So I think that's one thing we're gonna really have them work on, is a lot of the regulations. Food regulations.
And what do you anticipate the budget implications will be for this as we?
Nothing.
Oh, really?
They cost nothing,
Okay.
yeah. They're under a grant, and we're
Okay.
part of that, so
Okay.
that's why we're gonna take advantage of it. You know.
All right. Any questions for Board of Health? Anybody? I have one just of an administrative thing, and that is on the state recycling website, it says that our landfill will take certain things, which in fact it won't.
Oh, yes. and
Like
I can call the
48-inch
state on
fluorescent bulbs. So
that. Yep.
how can you tell the state
I
to
have
update their stuff?
I have a state contact, and I did email her.
Okay.
So I haven't gone back on to see if it was removed yet.
Okay.
I have not heard back from her, so I didn't know who else to turn to. So
Okay.
she's my person that handles.
Home Depot will do it, I found out, so.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
And
Not
NEDT, will they do it as well?
Not batteries. The place in Sutton will do regular flashlight batteries too.
We'll do batteries.
But you got to put them each in a piece of plastic,
But we do 'em.
which is not recyclable.
They're recyclable. We send them away.
The plastic bags are
Oh.
too.
I don't know.
I mean, it's a weird thing. You've got a battery you
I don't
want to
know what-
recycle, but you have to put it in a plastic bag, which
I
isn't
don't know
recyclable.
what they do with the plastic bags, but that's what they require, yes, so you're right.
Okay. All right. Anybody? Board of Health? Yeah. Go ahead, Ryan.
Kristen, can you talk a little bit about the sticker increase and its effect on retained? I know retained earnings was in a tough situation which caused the increase. How do we look now? I know that my guess is there were probably some who didn't renew because of the increase. Is the revenue picture
We don't know that yet,
okay?
because people, even though they were due March 1st,
Yeah.
we have a lot of stragglers, but we always have had that, so it's not unusual.
Okay.
But, so last year at this time, we sold about 1,022 stickers,
Okay.
and right now we sold 948. But I was kind of just grabbing a date. I don't know if that date was after a big weekend sale or,
Right.
so I don't know yet. It's close. It's not, we're not far off.
And so with the projections, let's say 948, with the increased sticker price, are we gonna cover our costs and be able to build up the
We are
intake?
counting, we're trying. Yeah, hopefully, yes. I mean,
Okay.
we have to see how many more we sell, but it's looking good.
The transfer station budget is about $350,000. That's the goal, and a large driver of that is BP trucking, the current hauler that we have. We're budgeting about $250,000, and then the recycling program with Blackstone, I think was about $10,000. I think the two of them together were the $250,000. So we were looking at, the increase had to happen. Unfortunately, it didn't happen the year before, which is where it should have, but COVID, there was a bunch of different things, and the sticker prices were held level funded since, what, Kristen? Do you remember
About
the date?
7 years.
Yeah, 7 years.
Yeah.
I think they were actually reduced before that, too.
Well, it was, and then, yes, it was reduced, and then they were level,
Right,
just
yeah.
never increased. And then the BP trucking was just escalating, and like I said, it should have happened the year before it did. So it went into effect July 1st. Unfortunately, the tickets expired in March, so it's kind of like with a vehicle, you get that big push in the February-March timeframe,
Right.
not when the effect went into place, but they did post the signs, and they also did a comparison on the
Haulers.
the haulers.
Private haulers.
So we're still below that. But yeah, I think, we're watching the number. Our target goal is at least 350, that's what we want to hit.
So with the numbers Kristen mentioned, she said 950 compared to, I think, 1,040.
1,022.
22. So that's, let's just use round numbers, a 10% decrease. Would that be enough to cover the cost for the years? If
Well, we're at 290
We're at 295.6.
in revenue. We want at a minimum of 350.
Okay,
So to at least fund the budget that's even without building a surplus in there.
right.
So you,
And how long is the current contract with BP?
Till June 30th.
yeah, it's a 1 year.
And do we have any thoughts on whether that's likely to go up again? In which case, we'll be
So-
kind of back at, not square one, but.
Yep, so we've been this has been a tough, trying to figure out what we're gonna do. We're looking at going trying to make it easier for the residents too, and more cost effective. Maybe go single stream, or add another compactor for plastics and things that make sense, like compact the plastic or whatever, but everything costs money.
Right.
And one company will do single streaming, or a BP can't do single streaming. So I went to Matt, and he's helping me look at the whole picture, and so it's kind of like in his hands at the moment to
Okay.
figure out the best way to go forward.
So so the contract, I assume, the new contract will be decided on by June 30th, is that correct? And then are there plans to reevaluate and see where we are in terms of
Yeah.
revenue? Okay.
It's going to be looked at on an annual basis. You have to keep up with the, at least the percentage increase on the salary and BP trucking.
Right.
Like I said, BP is, of the $350-something thousand for the budget, BP and Town Blackstone are $250 of that. And what is the salary piece is almost, it's between 80 and 90, I think.
That's one of my concerns. If the trucking
Right.
contract goes up 5–10%, you're going to likely have to raise
Correct.
fees again. Okay. Thank you.
Anybody else for Kristen? Questions or comments? I see we have our town nurse here. Your budget didn't really change much from last year, did it?
I don't know.
Okay,
That question would be to Matt.
I'm looking at it and it looks, but how, any issues that you can share with us in terms of your budget or what's keeping you awake at night, looking ahead for the next year?
Okay, so let me think.
Because when COVID was in its height, you were really slammed by
Let's
COVID,
guard
right?
is over and hopefully never again.
Yeah,
But I see the need of working more on emergency preparedness because like during the COVID we had we were fortunate enough to join Oxbridge for the big clinic, vaccination clinic. But who knows, next time maybe we'll have to organize it ourselves if something happens. And and I feel like we have to really practice for that because we don't have staff. It's just not setting up the clinic, but bringing people to help us to run it. So and we are so lucky to have Dave with us, who agreed to join the Board of Health, and he's expert in emergency preparedness, and he's helping us with so many things. And
So, what's your name?
Sir, I'm Dave Baldy. I moved here to Douglas in 2015.
Okay.
I'm a 15-year employee with the Rhode Island Department of Health, the Center for Emergency Preparedness and Response. This is what I do for a living. So I was asked to volunteer for the Board of Health here, and I enthusiastically offered my services and my experience in this. I came on in October, so in that time frame, we've been looking at
October
this October
22, correct?
22.
Gotcha, yeah.
So we've been looking at updating what's called the Emergency Dispensing Site, or EDS plan. That is in progress. We are required to do a drill this year before the end of June, which we anticipate. We're also targeting doing some in-town training for town personnel. That will likely be supplemented by volunteers or MRC, Medical Reserve Corps members from Grafton or another district if necessary. But what your question was, what keeps you up at night? And to that question, being able to pull off either a vaccination or medication dispensing operation in a short time frame against a public health threat is what keeps me up at night, both for my day job and for here. So I would really like to pull the town in the right direction in terms of updating our plan, having people prepared to do this, and having a populace that knows what the plan is and where to go and how to get the medical countermeasures that might be necessary.
So what have been the first things you've been focusing on?
Sure. So one of the first things is acquiring supplies and resources that will assist us in that operation. So one of the first things we have been working on is requesting updated, some of the PPE that we had was wildly expired and outdated. So getting those supplies to backfill, and so we have it, that it's ready to go if we should need it again. We're also working on acquiring a trailer that's being decommissioned from another jurisdiction, being brought here that can supplement our storage and our transportation capability to get supplies that are located here to our EDS site, which is the high school. So those are one of the first things I've been working on. There was a new plan template that was given to us by the Region 2, the Worcester Region Cooperative, and so that just came out in March 6th. So it's pretty new, but we're working to update the plan and get it up to speed with all the current guidances from the state.
So going forward, David, right?
Yes.
Is there a big budget implication for some of these things or not?
The only thing that would jump out to me, so one of the challenges is the Commonwealth isn't able to support municipalities like in a paying out cash for staff time. Not for me, I'm a volunteer, but should we need any other town personnel to attend training off hours on the weekends, etc., if they need to be paid for that time, that's going to be a challenge for us. I don't have any figures on that, but I'm approaching it right now from a good faith, assisting the town in an emergency perspective, and hopefully it won't have a budget implication too much. All the resources that we're requesting, we're getting for free from the state. So.
Yes, we will have to only register the.
Oh yeah, registration of the trailer
insurance.
is the one. Yeah, the insurance. On
So the trailer will go where?
We're hoping to put it right back here to supplement the small storage area we have in the community resource room.
Any questions, FinCom, for our town nurse or our chair of the Board of Health?
A couple different things. You mentioned that the PPE equipment expired. How did we allow that to happen as opposed to rotating that stock? You've got other departments that would use that, whether it be our own ambulatory emergency services, the fire department, you in the town nurse's office,
Yes,
the
so-
school nurses. I would have thought that stuff, the older, kind of a, first in, first out system of inventory tracking of the oldest stuff would have gotten rotated and used, and then the new stuff replacing, your safety stock on the shelf. How did that get handled?
When I came here in October, that was one of the things that I looked at, and we've already started to get rid of the old stuff by giving it so for example, the highway department can use respirators that have the vents, and that's not really a public health they were initially approved during COVID.
Sure.
But then, FDA said that the vented ones were not acceptable, so we let those go. And some of the gloves had just been from H1N1 era, and were no longer usable, so.
So, they are still good, like, nothing was thrown away. Nothing was just given to the highway department, or didn't, get rid of the stuff.
Okay, so it was
We just had
repurposed.
to, yes, we were using,
Yeah.
replacing,
Okay.
and we have.
I hear words like expired, I'm
Yes,
thinking like
yes,
there's a
no.
dumpster out back that we
No.
just
No,
chucked it all
nothing.
in and now you gotta
Nothing.
deal with
And the new
was
supplies that we acquired were provided for free from the state, so we didn't incur costs there.
Second question would be, one of the other items, I know we discussed at one of our previous meetings, I think it was last year, of the increased salary and wages due to COVID and the necessity and your extra time requirements. But this year, the budget hasn't changed, and you yourself said COVID's over, we hope we don't have to revisit that again. I would have expected that could have been kind of ratcheted back a little bit had, now that the emergency's over, so to speak, and we're not doing the vaccination clinics, we're not doing the testing, how does that kind of fare with what we're doing, hours, I should say, predictions or requirements for the upcoming fiscal year?
So I'm working usually like 14 hours a week, and I'm budget for 19, and this is just in case of when it's needed. And even though, like we said, like the COVID is over, but this is not like some that I'm not doing. Now I can do stuff I had no time to do it before. And like, for example, I can tell you one thing what I'm doing right now, take advantage of the grant money, which is offered, part of it is offered to us. I'm trying to develop a program for Town of Douglas because I see a need there. And this is a program for mothers and newborn babies. I feel like doing the research, reading a bunch of research papers with other nurses, needs to be more attention put in this field. And what we are planning to do, it's just contacting new mothers who bring baby home, contacting them when they are home, letting them know that we are here, providing them with the information if they have any questions, who they can contact here locally, not just somewhere hotline, just here. We also offer home visits, like if for some mom new baby has no help, because there is really need for it, because some of those mothers never get nurses visit after coming home because they overstayed in the hospital like 2 days, and no one comes and visit. Nobody cares like where the babies go, and if something happens, then it's on the news. But nobody cares about those babies. Nobody. So this is, I am from Europe. This is something what I've seen working in Poland when I was there, and I wish we had something like that. So we cannot force people to knock to the door and come. We will offer them. Like if you would like public health nurse to visit you, talk to you, call us. This is my number, call us. So we're gonna send them like a welcome card for the baby, and this is like like I also take the numbers of babies being born each year. So it's growing, and I feel like there is a need. Like we have senior center taking care of our seniors, but I feel like no one really shows interest in those new moms. So this is one of the programs. And this comes from the grant. This is, the money, and this is not only Douglas. We will do this in Uxbridge, Northbridge, all towns together. But I am responsible for the project.
I'd like to say something about that. Many years ago, almost 60 years ago, when I was a young new mother, the visiting nurse did come to my house when I came home with the baby, and kind of showed me a lot of things that I had no idea what to do with this little baby, and I think that's an excellent idea, quite frankly.
And when I had my baby 22 years ago, I remember I asked the nurse, like, so when you come to my house, when someone is coming?
Yeah.
I had no family here, no one. I had no idea what I'm doing. And they said, like, oh no, you overstayed for 8 hours, no one will come. Insurance won't cover it. So I said, so I can take this baby under the bridge now and nobody cares where it's going? No.
So just for the record, everybody, the budget that Matt's proposing, in case you didn't get a chance to look at it, the current budget for the nurse is 4118, and the one he's projecting for next time is 4133, so $16 more
Yeah.
for the year. So it's a pretty flat budget from this year to next. But to Mike's question, COVID is done, but you're filling that time with other things is what?
Because I had no time for that stuff.
Yeah, okay.
It was all COVID for 3 years, and there was like a bunch of stuff which I was neglecting during that time. This is one of the problems.
Oh, Carol,
Another
question?
one.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, I can add something.
Finish.
Food safety is very important to me because I feel like people eat a lot outside, out here, take food, home, and we have a couple cases of foodborne diseases, in this town related specifically to one place, and that really concerns me. And for that reason, I decided to, become a food inspector on the top of what I'm doing right now, because that's important to me. I mean, for me, it's a health of people paying money to eat safe, and it looks like they not always do. So I would like to be involved in the inspections in the town, but that's, I need more training, and I'm in the process of getting my some certifications right now.
Carol, go ahead.
Yeah, just one thing I wanted to say about the trailer. Have you looked into the zoning bylaws? Because we're not allowed to use trailers for storage in the town of Douglas. And it even went to court.
I'm not aware of that.
I think you better look it in before you buy your trailer.
But this is
It's
small.
not, we're not paying anything for it, it's,
But even to get it, even start using it. Because there's gonna be people who say, well, if you came and you made me get rid of my trailer that I was using for storage, how can you do it?
But this is the same size a fire department has on their property.
I'm just
You know,
telling
that
you
are
what
just
the zoning
areas.
is. I didn't think that ever should have been brought in. Should have been a zoning ordinance, but it was. You remember that
I
one?
remember that one where it was the trailers and shipping containers too, right? Was the
yeah.
other
They
thing.
decided
People-
shipping containers were the same thing
Right.
as a trailer, and you couldn't use them
And we've
either.
got several of those around town at the different ball fields and at the schools and
right,
stuff, so
right.
it could become a headache if somebody really wanted to press the issue.
Right.
Did you have your hand up?
Yeah, is that style?
What's your name?
Bob Sullivan.
Oh, Bob, just for the record, yeah.
Is, Carol, did that include the
Well,
utility trailers
the
like
thing
that?
is, it's saying a trailer, and then they decided that a shipping container also was under the same type of thing, and you couldn't use that. I think it's a stupid bylaw myself, but I'm just telling you, that's what's there.
But if they say that if it's a utility trailer and they keep it supplied for emergency situations,
Well, I don't think there's anything in there for that.
because highway falls under the same
Oh.
thing with the traffic trailers.
Oh, I agree.
I have a traffic trailer.
Yeah.
We store all the equipment for
Just look at
responses and.
look at the zoning and
road
see
work.
what it says, that's all.
I mean, if somebody really wanted to play that zoning to the letter of the law,
Yeah.
Right.
like I said, it could be a headache. I disagree with it. I'm with Carol. I think it's a silly bylaw that got voted in a few years back, but yet it sits there on the book, so.
Dr. Fitzpatrick, I just want to offer the fact that if it's helpful to distinguish this trailer and its unique purchase, my painting and design students would do the decaling of the vehicle to maybe that we reduce some of the controversy in the event you determine it's within the rules.
Just so you know, it's also currently labeled as a public health trailer for the region of Worcester too. I mean, it's not like just a plain trailer.
Okay.
It's specifically purposed for that. It would have a town plate on it.
I'm saying it's registered, it's not just
Yes,
sitting on
it's registered, yes.
a site has storage.
Yeah.
And it's not a huge trailer, it's not like different sizes, but this
They don't
one's
have a
like-
thing on size.
All right, let's carry on, everybody. So any more questions for either Board of Health, the nurse, animal inspector, et cetera? Anybody? All right, thank you guys for coming. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Oh, I appreciate the help.
Robert, you want to come up one level or stay there, or?
I think that's a great idea. Hope the nurse has a great idea.
I think so. I think definitely going into each house when they bring babies home. It's definitely a good idea.
Bob, you remember what your line item number is in the budget? What department number?
Bob is not, he's an enterprise fund,
Yeah, I was gonna say, I have the whole budget here for you.
so you won't find him on the general fund.
Okay.
So if you want to take one and pass around, it's three pages.
Did you have a 1% guide too from our town administrator in terms of increase?
No, not
He's
exactly.
enterprise,
He's
so
enterprise.
so
Right.
He can do whatever he wants.
he carries himself, basically.
Unfortunately, I have a lot of regulations that dictate and
He cannot do whatever he wants.
I didn't say.
So Bob, we don't need to go through every item?
no.
Give
So I
us
just,
a bird's eye view of
like I said, I can.
what's going on?
I tried to break it down so it was clear enough so you could see the differences. I mean, one of the significant ones is the salary. So there's two departments here, the water and the sewer, so the majority of the sewer's on the first and then the first part of the second page, and then it goes to the water. So with the proposed comp reform, there is some increase in the salary portion. So that's the justification on the salary portion of that.
Are we looking at the bottom of the page then, or? I mean, is there a total?
Yeah, so
Comparing?
if you look at the top part,
Yep.
so the first section of this spreadsheet is the salaries.
Okay.
The totals are in bold underneath that first little gap. So the first column is 2023, the second column is 2024,
Gotcha, yeah.
and then the third column is the difference between the two columns.
Gotcha, okay.
So that way you can see the difference between the 2 years.
Yeah.
There's little notes on the side to kind of point out those are anomalies, and they're outside of the normal annual budget. So, like for example, if you go down to the repairs and maintenance line item on the first page, about a third of the way down, you'll see that line item's $204,000. So the normal for that budget item is $40,000, but the year before you see it was $137,000. So I had $97,000 in additional kind of outside the normal projects that were done. So there are certain upgrades to wastewater equipment, different things like that. So I kind of explained on the side, it's $40,000 is normal, $164,000 is in additional needs. One of the big ticket items there was there's an electrical upgrade in some of the control panels at the wastewater plant. There's a lot of electronics at the wastewater plant, so the system that we have there now that was put in 2004, all the equipment is antiquated and you can't get it anymore. So if you look at all the CPUs and the input and output analog and digital cards, there's probably 50 or so different components in there, and one of the components I just got a price to replace, and just for one of those units it was $18,000 because you can't get them anymore, so it's kind of a special item. It's obsolete, they don't manufacture them anymore. So for one, I need it for the reliability, because if one of those components go down, the whole treatment plant may be down. So to get spare parts on the shelf, it's going to be very expensive. So the upgrade cost of that panel, which is what's recommended, is about $110,000. But like I said, there's one component, and there's probably 10 of those components within all the panels that we have is $18,000 a piece. So the upgrade will make it so that it's readily available parts, and we'll be able to keep operating without worrying about going down and not being able to get something.
Can I ask you just a general question a second?
Mm-hmm.
So in an enterprise fund, the way you have your revenue, and then of course you have your expenses. So what's the biggest limiting factor each year as you make your budget?
So
When you think about what you need to spend.
Right. I mean, my limiting factor is the revenues. So obviously it's rates.
Yeah.
There's one of the parts that's hard to determine is if you have a drought year or a heavy rain year. So this last year was a drought year, so a lot of people were using water to water lawns, and so you get increased revenue because they're using additional water. And then there was a previous year where it rained almost every day. So now we had a lot of rain and we lost revenue because people weren't watering their lawn, watering their gardens. I think COVID helped a little bit in that sense because people were home a lot more. So they're home using the water instead of at work. So where Douglas is kind of a bedroom community, if people are at work, they're not here using water and sewer. But like I said, COVID had a lot of people home or working from home, so it increased our revenues a little bit.
So when you think about maintenance kinds of things, are some of the costs from that from various grants you can get on a regular basis, or some of that from water use?
There's not a whole lot of grants. We've done some stuff on energy. We did energy audits and got, National Grid to cover the cost of some things. We upgraded all the lighting to LED in between National Grid and a gap funding grant that we got through the state. It covered the majority of that cost to do those upgrades, which was fortunate because half of those lights were dead anyway, so we didn't replace lights, we replaced them all through a grant, so.
So water usage is really your big income then?
It is, yeah.
Water and sewer. So think of it like the general fund, right? So you have the water and sewer usage, which is their operating budget, and if they have any sewer development or water development or even their retained earnings, his mindset should be, I'm going to use that for those one-time expenses within his operating budget. So if you look at the end of his budget, you'll see revenue sources where he has $1.3 million from raise from user fees, and then $102,000 from reserve for debt, and then sewer, water, and retained earnings being used. So he should be using those sewer, water, and retained earnings for those projects within his budget. And $1.3 million would be for the salaries and normal expenses within his budget.
So Bob, do you have to spend every penny you earn, or can you save for a rainy day?
No, we're actually required to have some money in retained earnings to fund things that come up, like critical failures of pumps or, things like that, so. And every year we look at it and where we stand in the budget, and we're required to have spare parts for a lot of things. So as we go through it and we get near the end of the year, depending on how the revenues look, we'll look at what we need to do for spare parts. So we try to keep ahead of it on the spare parts inventory, but not far enough ahead that we worry about something becoming obsolete before we use it. So.
And what keeps you up at night?
Well, right now, I'm sure you guys have all seen all the projects going on, so my biggest issue is staff. We have very limited staff running the entire water and sewer department in town.
How many altogether?
So there's 3 of us running everything right now. We have a full SBR treatment plant, which is an advanced treatment plant. It's a little more sophisticated than most of your average treatment plants around here. So we are very limited on staff. And part of that problem is there's such a shortage in operators, because you have to be certified. There's certain licenses that you're required to have. And on the wastewater side, because it's an advanced treatment, the level's a little higher than an average plant. So it's difficult getting operators. A lot of them, in the past 10 years, I think they said about a third of the operators have retired. And they're saying in the next 10 years, there's probably another third that are going to retire. And there's just not a whole lot of demand for it. There's a lot of demand, but there's not a lot of, kids in high school now, they want to make $1 million making a video game or playing a video game or being an influencer, so.
Maybe Dr. Fitzpatrick's taking notes on new programs that we can.
Yeah.
We just asked them to give some of the money back to the school.
So, I did, before I came here, I had about 200 different systems I used to operate. And we went to some community colleges, or like Blackstone Valley. There's the one up in, it's up near Hanscom Air Force Base there. No, it was the Minuteman.
Minuteman is Lexington, Concord.
Yeah, so we went to them, and they had agreed to start a program to have classes so that some of the students could come out of there with the lower level licenses to be operators, but Then I came here before I finalized that whole thing with them, so I'm not sure how they made out with it, but
So generally speaking, would you say financially, water sewers doing okay?
I'd say we're in good shape. I think we manage it fairly well financially, so. And I think some of these big projects will also help so that, you know, there won't be any big rate increases once these big facilities get online.
Any questions for Bob, anybody?
I do have just one little question. You said how make more money when it's dry, but how are you not supposed to be watering our lawns?
We're not, so we do have a water ban that goes into effect every year.
Right.
But the way the water ban is established, it's kind of to promote good practices. It's between 9 a.m. and 5 p.m.
Yep.
So during the night, you can water your lawn. If you're watering during those hours, it's typically evaporating a lot.
Right.
Also, when the water droplets are on your grass in the dead of the sun, those droplets of water act as a magnifying glass and it burns your grass more so than helps it. So it kind of promotes more, you know, better management of the water system. So, but yeah, we're not supposed to water.
Right.
But that's one of those things where the state tells us that we got to put a water ban in effect, and I'm telling everybody not to use water, but I'm in the business of selling water. So.
Yeah.
Is it at a certain point, though, if we take too much water, we get fined, right? But we're not at that level?
Yeah, we're not at that level yet.
Okay.
We're getting close with all this new development going on. So the state limits us, and DCR was one of the factors that we had a higher limit that we could withdraw. I mean, our wells are capable of producing about 1 million gallons a day. The state's got us limited to 380,000 gallons a day. So we used to have a lot more, but DCR wrote a letter saying that Douglas isn't expanding that much. They don't need that much water.
Yeah.
I tried fighting what they reduced us to. The selectmen, we started going down the road of fighting with the state, and then the state came back and said, oh, well, we'll agree to this, this, and this, which they really didn't agree to much, but the selectmen went ahead and signed the agreement, so.
Do we need another well in town?
I mean, we have a few areas that we've designated. If you look at the Aquifer Protection District, there's areas that we protected through the Aquifer Protection that are not current wells, but they're potential well sites. We did investigate one of them that was on there, and it turned out that it's not a viable source, so we eliminated that from the Aquifer Protection to allow for development in industry and stuff. So once we get through some of these bigger projects and I get some more staff, I'll have some time to start pursuing those other areas. Like I said, if we're protecting an area for an aquifer, I'd like to test it to make sure it is a viable source, and if it's not, let's pull it out of the protection district and, you know, allow growth. But that's kind of the way I look at it. So.
Okay, questions, anybody? Yeah, Brian?
I got a couple. You talked about salaries. You're looking for more staff currently.
Correct.
So are those positions?
All the positions I need are funded in this budget.
And if you don't fund it, you just return it to retainer.
Right. So the things that I fund certain things, and like there's a line item in here. If you look, it said special engineering.
Yeah.
There's one in the water, one in the sewer. I put 50,000 in each of those. My commissioners are kind of under the understanding that that will not be spent unless there's a certain circumstance that dictated that. These projects that are going on now, we had to move some projects around in the previous year in order to make those projects come to fruition because we didn't have any funding sources. So some of the projects that I had going on, I said, all right, let's hold off on these, and then I had money in the budget to do certain projects. We held off on those to fund the beginning phases of the engineering, because if we didn't get the engineering done, we would have missed all the deadlines. Mm-hmm. And to call a special meeting to get funding for that was, you know, kind of out of the question. So I moved things around in order to get that moving forward, and then went to town meeting to fund the original projects to get that money back in there. So I talked to the commissioners, as I said, you know, I think it's a good idea right now, just looking at all the other things that we have going on. I'm not sure how familiar you guys are with all the other projects that we're looking at right now, but so we just kind of put some money in there earmarked for if there's a circumstance that comes up that we need to move forward with it in order to, like, some of these were, if we didn't move forward, we wouldn't have been eligible for grants. The projects that we did, I think we're up to, you know, almost 7 million, actually 7+. 7.4 million or so in grants that we received. And if we didn't have that money there to move forward with the engineering, we would have missed out on those, so.
Now, you mentioned most of those projects, or majority of that projects funded by grants. Were your retained earnings affected at all with all the projects going on in town? Did you have to spend any of that?
So I had to spend a little bit, like I said, to fund the initial phases of those, the engineering, but, you know, some of those, I forget what the number was, it was $50,000 or $60,000. But I figured 50 or 60,000 was a good investment to get, you know, about $8 million worth of project done at no cost to our ratepayers, so.
Right, right.
I thought
Plus
it
an
was a wise
opportunity
investment.
to bring in some tax revenue for the whole town.
Right, tax revenue and we'll,
Water sales.
we'll also get more sales and
Right, right.
and connection fees and everything else, so.
Right.
Finally, it looks like you're spending $125,000 of the retained earnings in your budget. Is that correct? Correct. Okay. And do we know what is the current balance after that money is deducted?
I do not have it with me,
I
but,
don't have it.
I can get it.
I know Gene will ballpark it, but maybe you will, Bob.
I can see Gene getting a little heated over there right now.
There are a bunch of disclaimers on that, because
Right,
DOR
so-
has changed the way they certify retained earnings. So on the general ledger, I keep things more in buckets. So water sewer development, its own bucket, sewer system development, its own bucket, retained earnings is its own. When DOR certifies it, what you see as water development, sewer development, retained earnings, that would be one piece for them. So we break it down for our internal, so Bob knows what is truly, what I consider to be retained earnings, but DOR has a different rule.
So Gene, so in short, Gene makes me justify how I'm using the money more so than DOR would.
So,
Because it's, in a sense, we kind of agreed when we established fees that there was particular reasons for them. So, like the water system development and the sewer system development, technically through DOR, those are considered retained earnings.
okay.
But we separate them and say, all right, this money was collected for a certain purpose, and that's what we want to use it for, so.
So you could say you're actually spending $250,000 of retained
Of
earnings.
DOR is retained earnings.
DOR is
correct.
retained earnings.
Correct.
Yes,
And then essentially, I think DOR still kind of considers the reserve for debt as
retained
retained
earnings,
earnings,
yeah.
but we collected fees for debt, for services, you know, for things like building the treatment plant. So that's the majority of what that debt is. So we've already collected that money, so we stopped charging the fee, so we have the money sitting in retained earnings, but it's already earmarked to pay loans that we have outstanding.
so if I gave you a copy of the certified retained earnings statement, it would include all of those pieces, where in the general ledger, I break it down.
So,
Is the sum of all those pieces of current retained earnings over $1 million? Can I just ask it
No, I
that
don't
way?
think so.
it's very close.
Very
Yeah.
close, okay. And does this amount of spent retained earnings, is it trending one way or the other over the past years? Is this typical of what you typically spend over the past 3 or 4 years?
It's been fairly typical.
Okay,
But it's because we've had a lot of projects and stuff. I mean, like, we did the booster station a few years back. That was paid for out of retained earnings instead of borrowing. So we did get to a point where we did several larger projects that depleted the retained earnings quite a bit. Luckily, we've had a lot of big projects going on, like North Village and some of these warehouses and stuff that, and there's a few other little developments in town, Joseph Road and Williams Court. So some of those, we're getting a lot of the, you know, they kind of replenish the retained earnings through those fees.
okay.
Yeah, and to your point, if he doesn't hire staff, which he hasn't the last 3 years, I think he's budgeted staff, that flows back into retained earnings, where it would have normally been spent.
So the staffing shortage has helped our retained earnings,
Yeah.
essentially.
Doesn't help Bob, but.
It's all on my back, but
Thank you, Bob. Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Ryan. Anybody else questions for Robert? Okay, thanks for coming. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
You want to stay there or come to the table?
Whatever you'd like.
Why don't you come to the table, Dr. Fitzpatrick? Have you all had a chance to look at what I emailed you a while ago? Let's start with questions first, if anybody has any questions for Dr. Fitzpatrick about his budget.
have a few summary sheets, if that's a good way to kick off.
Are those different than what you sent us before, or not?
I know, I don't believe you received this, but, okay.
Okay.
If it looks familiar, you did.
I'll
take one of those around.
Yeah, I'm just looking at,
Well, I have copies for you if you want.
yeah, that'd be great.
I
Let's
guess
do
the
that.
first thing I wanted to say was this is my 31st presentation before you, okay? And secondly, I'd like to convey a special appreciation to my colleague, Michael Fitzpatrick, who indicated to me tonight he was allowing the older Fitzpatrick to go in front of him, and the capital project would be later.
Yeah.
I'd like to recognize the local school committee rep who serves as the liaison to Douglas, but actually serves all 13 towns, Mark Potter. Okay, and Mark is a graduate of the school, a licensed electrician in the trades, which you've always preferred, and serves not only on the school committee, but on the advisory committee, which is a network of 400 tradespersons who help and coach us, and also on the facility subcommittee. Is that a fair summary?
Yep.
Yep. So here's a...
Oops. Oh, we get a thing with it. Each one of us get one of these.
Anyone else need one? Everyone else does?
Yep.
Okay, Jeannie? Okay.
I shared mine.
Howard
with
gave
her.
it. So if I may, the summary sheet is intended to provide a synchronized or a summary version of the impact. Information has already been shared with Jeannie and the town manager, which is standard practice. Your chair asked me earlier, where are we at this cycle? This is my 8th Finance Committee presentation and the presentation of the FY24 budget. I did want to mention to you that I had a couple of suggestions that are a little outside of us, but as we closely monitor what develops in the state, there were 2 sources of money that I think the town should explore to maximize, which is outside of us. The first is there's a Rural Schools Coalition, and the Rural Schools Coalition has lobbied aggressively with the legislature and the new governor to increase the number of dollars that will be made available to rural schools. Kind of the recognition of the urban, unique factors of urbans, and the Rural School Coalition has pointed out the unique challenges that are faced by rural communities. Douglas qualifies as a rural community, and so there will be money in that pool to be pursued. Also, we have written previously to the state that, like you, we never felt the money that the town received for the pilot, the payments in lieu of taxes for state-owned property, such as the state forest or any other property, was anywhere near the value of the property. But the state, the initial budget for FY24 increased the pilot fund by 14%. So those are 2 sources. You might already be on top of those, and so be it. But if not, it's something you might want to find. We've always looked to see where else we can identify that could be helpful to any one of the 13 towns, and there are different eligibilities across 13 towns, as you can well imagine. So the summary sheet, if I may.
You bet.
The total increase that we're requesting in a budget that was just approved last Thursday night is $63,052. That's an increase of 3.9%. The town continues to maintain an ownership of just over 9%, 9.1% in its vocational technical school, which is represented by 115 students. The total assessment is listed, and the debt is here. Both of those numbers, again, have been given to Jeannie and the town manager. Walking through this, it might be noticeable or worth noting that the enrollment of 9.2% of 115 students is very consistent with the debt obligation. We're in the 19th year of the debt in FY24, so there's only one more year of payment, and then all debts are addressed. Okay, so the per student assessment, which is the charge that built into the assessment, complemented by grants, by the state funds, and anything else we can recruit, is just under $14,000 per student. It is $13,991 per student. We were fortunate to have another year of no grievances and no legal entanglements. I credit the school committee and the Teachers Association for the harmony and the relationships. It just means we haven't had to redirect legal funds away from education to pay for arguments, settlements, disagreements, and grievances. We've had absolutely none. Many communities, I believe Douglas was one of them. In fact, the last time I saw it, 119 communities of the 351 cities and towns in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts received the actual bare minimum of $30 per student. I think that's what happened here. Okay, in the base Chapter 78. It's conceivable that that amount might be increased to 50 or 60 or maybe even 100 per student, but that's not very much. Okay, that's a pittance, if you will. And so that's a point of great controversy across many of the member towns that they thought the state would be more generous, if you will, with all the publicity about the new ed reform law and the money that's available and the rainy day fund and the other resources that the state has. But in any case, at the current situation, the state has not agreed to share that with you, okay, and with 119 others, all right? But in our case, we did receive $488 per student, not the 30. And that's the factor is the categories and classifications of our students relative to minority considerations, economic factors, and the higher standard we have to meet to run our programs. So the state was more generous. A year ago when I presented to you, I mentioned that this Chapter 70 base aid went up by some $300,000+. And I said the best news, there was a double benefit there. One, we could use it last year, FY23. Also, it wouldn't reduce moving forward because of the hold harmless factor. And it didn't, it actually doubled. So we're able to increase. In fact, it feels, it's helpful to us. The Chapter 71 is the regional transportation. Because Douglas joined 12 other communities in entering into the partnership of Blackstone Valley Tech, it participates in the higher reimbursement of student transportation, which the governor says will be at 90%. We haven't seen it to be that robust yet, closer to 75%, but nevertheless, we were able to increase our reimbursements substantially by that. The district will once again reach into its excess and deficiency, the equivalent of free cash for you, this time for $100,000. Okay, that's a little less. Last year we did it for $225,000. We've just felt that it's conservative and prudent, but the district could still reach into its own reserves to offset some of the assessments to help. Once again, the students and staff, sometimes retirees as well, have continued to help us out with maintenance and improvements and protection of the facility that we have. I've invited people to tour, and I will continue to renew that. For those who wish to tour the school, if you haven't, you just let us know. We'd be glad to have you see your vocational technical school, have you walk through it. It is more than 60 years old, but generally it receives high grades for the way in which it's, I guess, protected and maintained. We've established a new partnership with just recently with National Grid. Energy costs, of course, are skyrocketing everywhere, and we're looking to create new techniques and new monitoring devices to reduce the energy. I'd like to point out that our budget, okay, has no dependence at all on one-time ESSER or ARPA money. We didn't build any of the requests from those sources, which obviously, since they're one-time, would not renew moving forward. And then last week, we received notification of the awards of our students who are competing in the Central Mass Skills USA, which is multiple competitions. I point out some of the highly successful Douglas students who are part of that, significant accomplishment. I have a chance to work with Hunter Claflin regularly. He's quite the spokesperson. Not that you wouldn't be proud of all your students, but he's got quite the future. The next sheet is recent activities. Since the budget was designed, we thought it would be helpful to give people a snapshot of more recent activities because they're currently in motion. Earlier today, I met with the two individuals who represented the Fidelity Foundation, who toured the school and met with us relative to determining whether or not they will make this award of some $400,000. They promised to let us know in April whether or not they will. They offered supportive, I will call it optimistic comments relative to their willingness to do that. That money would go to manufacturing, welding, and the plumbing department. So it's directly related to the trades. It would allow us to, once again, buy new equipment and instrumentation. Therefore, we did not have to include it in the budget. You see a list here of a number of other things, but in summary, it's a total of more than $600,000 in additional grants that are currently under review that we're awaiting a response. But we're feeling quite positive about the way that will be funded. Right? And then on the bottom, I also listed that once again, we're applying for relief under a Senate bill that's just been filed. I shared this previously with you, but just to bring it back, several state treasurers ago, when there was a change at the state level, they sent us a back bill from 2013. Okay, no one lost any reimbursement for pension activity, but the state never billed us, and then they decided to bill us, years later. And so we said that no, that's not fair play. That you can't just, they were faulty in their untimely billing. Okay, and so we contested this. The auditors have suggested that we view this as a lien, and we did. So this money is in a reserve fund, just for this purpose, in the event we don't win this. So there's no increased cost if we don't get it. But if we are successful and it's forgiven, which is the basis of the Senate bill, that will pass, then that money can be used for other purposes associated with pensions, right? But, a year ago, the bill stalled in the House of Representatives, and actually Ways and Means. So that's what happened to it. So it didn't make its way through. The next attachment is the fact that when and if you get a chance to visit the school or otherwise have conversations with the students who are enrolled, he said we were successful in applying to the state through Milford Hospital to have a renewal of the satellite hospital program that's in the school. Okay, so we're one of the very few non-urban schools, because we're not on an urban transit system, that has a hospital in the school, in addition to our school nurses and others. This obviously gave us extra protection during the COVID days and all year round. This was renewed for 10 years, so the grant is worth more than $1 million. So, the other document is a summary version of the budget.
You may have got that sent to us already. Yeah.
I'll scan through it, or otherwise address any questions you might have. What would you like?
Any questions at this point? 'Cause I think we all, yeah, go ahead, Ryan.
Sorry, I have a few. So just looking on the green sheet here on this presentation.
Right.
It looks like the overall assessment increased by 6.7%.
The total is?
For all 13 members.
That's correct. In the summary version, okay, but yours is 3.9.
And is that due to reduced enrollment? Is that why that number, I assume that's why we're only 3.9?
Actually, there's three factors that drive that.
Okay.
Before the Ed Reform Law, enrollments governed everything, but that's not true anymore. The state's determination of ability to pay is based on the 2022 property tax and the 2020 income tax of the citizens of Douglas.
Okay.
And so you got those two factors, okay, that the state determines, and they present us with information. They also then send us the absolute minimum contribution that's in the chart, and they also notify the town.
Yeah.
So the reduction of students is the difference of 3 students.
Okay.
Right, frankly, since almost all across the state there was a reduction of students, it really didn't make much of a change.
Okay.
And your ownership of 9.2%,
Yeah.
right, it didn't alter that much.
Right.
It helped, you could say it helped.
It helped a little bit.
It impacted slightly, but not significant. Okay. Right. So what happened here is the state revenues are up about 5%, and the total budget is up 5.9%, the total budget across 13 towns, but not paid equally according to the rules. For you, it's 3.9%.
Okay.
Okay?
I'm not sure I quite understand. So more than likely, another town is paying 8% or 9%.
They could be paying more,
Yes.
okay? But in the towns that are paying significantly more, they witness a significant increase in the absolute minimum contribution calculation of the state.
State. Okay.
And recognize regional finance is a science of its own. I'll give you any background you want, but it's not simple. Okay?
Right. Yep.
Okay. We're like the 14th town of a 13-town partnership.
Correct.
Right. So yes, it varies significantly. You could say I'm more popular in some towns than others, if I'm popular anywhere, okay, relative to budget presentations.
Right.
So as a result of the partnership that Douglas has with the other 12 towns, you have the total complex and all the resources, and all of that, but it also means that other towns are asked and directed by the state and by the 60-year-old agreement of the partnership, they pay their portion. Is different than yours.
Right.
Your per pupil assessment is also less than many other towns.
And that's again based on the minimum contribution.
Yeah, that's driven by the state.
Yeah.
I have to say, before 1993, before the first ed reform law was implemented, it was much easier for the superintendent, Mr. Picard, and Mr. Sullivan before that. I don't think it's a relative of Bob, but anyway, if you had 10% of the students, you had 10% of the bill. But it's how we talked about this. All right, but that's all changed. The state continued, and they changed it again.
Look, the state would want to keep it simple for everybody.
Well,
That's nothing that obviously you can control. A second question, the excess and deficiency funds.
Right.
You guys had put 225,000 in each of the last 2 years, less than half this year. Can you talk a little bit more on why that decision was made? And
sure. Voted by the school committee. The excess and deficiency has to be certified by the Department of Revenue. You've already heard earlier tonight how much the Department of Revenue impacts some of the things. The Department of Revenue certified our excess and deficiency at 801,000. Okay, so that's a little less than what's been available in the past.
Okay.
We're able to keep 5% maximum. So the 801,000 that was certified is still 500,000 under the maximum, but we didn't have, the maximum anyway. So the school committee thought it best to draw a little lesser money, okay, for the assessment offsets issue. By the way, even using any money from E&D was not unanimous. We saw that at the school committee meeting. Some members of the school committee they question whether or not if we, should continue to self-fund, given the fact that we've self-funded, debt, we make our own improvements, we're totally covering all costs, nothing is passed off to a community to help pay for it. But in any case, it was agreed, it had to be voted, or else I couldn't put it here.
right.
Okay, so that was the decision of the entities, the powers to be. And I encouraged them not to remove it. So I fought for the 100,000, for what it's worth.
Yep.
Okay.
But it does sound like there's a chance that may go away in the future budgets as well.
I hope, well, possibly, I'm just saying, they want to wean the towns off it, so it isn't expected, okay? Also, frankly, some school committee members felt that the contributions made by the district, I would say wouldn't appreciate it, but they weren't recognized significantly in the reactions we were getting from certain financial play. Keep in mind, we have 126 finance committee members. So it's a little different situation.
One more question. I assume you still have the post-secondary nursing program, is the right phrase?
You have no nurses.
No nurses, okay. You anticipated my question before I asked.
Well, I've been doing this for a long time.
Okay, thanks. That's all I got.
Anybody else? Howard, do you have a question? I see your hand up.
It wasn't, but I will. So, Michael, let me ask you, I think you just kind of suggested, is overall enrollment down?
I think it's now by 3 students or something. That's because of the transfer of students in the upper grades moving out of the area, and then we couldn't replace the junior who was in the shop, or the senior that was in the shop.
Okay.
Okay, the interest in coming for next year, 835 candidates applied for next year's freshman class from the district alone. So the interest in coming is monstrous, okay? The freshman class will get larger and larger, but in moderate, because we're maxed. So the freshman classes could conceivably be like 330 students, but they can't be much greater, because we have no room for them.
Well, that was kind of my question. I wasn't sure if you were suggesting as a lot of the school districts, both in our region and across the state, start to have drops in numbers of enrollment. That you guys, by the nature of the ability to get the number of applications you have the ability, unless you run out of applications, and you're not in danger of that at any point, you're still able to fill year over year, come close to fill year over year.
Yeah,
correct?
we're protected in some way.
Yeah,
The state data says that 4.2% fewer students are in the public schools.
Yeah, okay.
Not
But
with us.
you don't have that issue because you've got the applications that allow you to, short of seeing applications where you say those students wouldn't be a fit, but they're nowhere near that either.
That's correct.
You've got the ability.
So what's happening, what the state discovered is some 30,000 students did not go back to the public schools after COVID. You know, they went someplace else. They were homeschooled, they went to private schools, they went to charter schools, they went to Catholic schools, they didn't come back to the schools.
Okay, I'm good.
Yeah, but that's a discussion that's happening in a lot of places.
Sure.
Anybody else?
Just
Go ahead, Howard.
I'll complete then. You know, I've always asked, could you get us or get me through the system placement?
I did that last time.
Last time.
That was the last graduating class I sent you a pretty, but I'll do it again.
Yeah, can I get
The
it
next
year over
cycle?
year? Year over year,
Yeah, okay.
if you would.
Oh,
Yeah,
I shall.
please. Yeah.
So I'm looking at our budgets from the last couple of years. And in 2022, our increase from the prior year for BBT was 11%. Last year was 0.3%, and this year is 3.9%. So in general, are those swings in those percentage increases based on state number crunching?
Yes, because as you point
I
out.
mean, 11% one year and 0.3 the next year. That's a big
Right.
swing.
Yeah, and the quick answer is yes.
Okay.
Okay, and to highlight that observation, okay, when the budget went up 10.7%, but I'll call it 11%, okay, there was an increase of 2 students. So it wasn't the student change that drove that. A year later, FY23, there was a reduction of 4 students and the budget went down, I'm sorry, it went up $3,000, but pretty much level, okay? So it was a 0.2. Right? So you can see the ratios of increase are not being driven by the student counts solely, right? And then, it's the state, as you point out.
Hmm.
You're 100% right.
So Gene, it looks like the dollar amount from last year to our new budget is around 65,000? Is that what it-
$63,052.
Okay.
And that's on the top of the chart and information that was sent to Jean in
Yep.
advance of this meeting.
Yeah.
To be helpful for planning purposes.
Oh, I see it, right,
That's okay.
63.
By the way, I also provided estimates, whenever asked, okay, or to forecast before the state comes out with help.
Anything to comment, our board member?
No, nothing really much to elaborate on. I got a graduating senior there this year, and a freshman there now, and they're both loving it. No, nothing really to...
Do you feel...
Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you. It's
Which-
been a stressful past
Yeah.
couple of months.
Which,
Mike knows.
electrical?
My daughter's graduating from Pangan Design, and my son's in mechanical HVAC.
Are you on a subcommittee of the board then, or how do you set that up?
For, what's that?
Valley Tech Board, are you...
I'm on the advisory committee, so I represent a bunch of other folks in the electrical department, just talking about trade trends, what we're seeing out in the field, any curriculum that might need to be added to the, students. Go over their shop budgets, stuff like that. That's pretty much it, really.
Facilities.
Facilities, subcommittee, starting to get, I just recently got involved in that about 6 months ago, so, new facilities manager at the school. So trying to get him on board and, guide him in what upgrades can be done and what things are priority, and there's some projects coming down the pipeline that'll get us involved a little bit more, so looking forward to that.
Okay, well, great, thank you. Question, yeah, go ahead, Lynn.
I do have one question. I always ask you every year.
Sure.
Your health insurance increased this year?
2%.
2%.
That's in my cover letter, that's in the document that I shared this evening.
Okay.
2% increase, okay, which we were delighted to receive. Okay, so.
Yeah, Mike?
Any prospects for capital purchases? I mean, you mentioned that the debt's got another year before that rolls off. You've got plenty of demand, right? If you've got an anticipated incoming class of 300 plus or minus students, you got demand for 700-800 students filling out applications. To me, it looks like you're ripe for expansion potential. You've got even some of our own departments saying there's not enough supply of tradesmen and women coming into the workforce. Any additional look to expand, or?
it's a good observation. In my cover letter, and I failed to mention it because I guess I was so eager to get into some of the other comments, the cover letter references the fact that the FY24 budget is the 19th year of the existing debt. So the 1 year after that is the 20th year totally wipes it. I suggest that the communities anticipate that we will advance a debt for during 25 that would commence in 26, okay? But several of the VOTEC schools have, let's just say, aggressive expansion plans. Tri-County has a $300,000 project. Yeah, all right, 300 million, sorry.
That seems small.
That's how cheap signing up for that, right? Sorry. One day. So, and Whittier up in Haverhill has a $400 million budget. We know that that won't fly, okay? So that's too much of a change for us. What I would envision is like a $20 million bond for us to continue to make little improvements and make, it's almost like fixing the current house rather than buying a new house, all right? And so, yeah, I'm expecting that I will make a recommendation to the school committee, and they can decide whether or not they wish to advance it. But during FY25, impacting 26 and beyond, depending on the duration. The current bond was refinanced after 10 years. Probably the entire project was like a 2%. A new bond would be 6 or 7%, okay, given what, the way things are headed. So yes, I am suggesting and trying to put the communities on notice in my communications that anticipate a request for a moderate, okay, increase in a bond to be able to. Also, there's fewer students in the district, so we're trying to be sensitive to the fact that even though the interest in coming to us is particularly strong, that you have to be sensitive to not draining the student populations from the 11 school districts that are all part of the valley. So just the balance and all of that. So we want to be the other school, but not a competitive school per se in that regard. Does that answer that question?
It does.
Yeah.
Anybody else?
Yeah, the Three Seasons restaurant now open to the
It
public?
is. It's waiting for you.
Okay.
Okay, yeah, full course.
Because I know it was closed during COVID and stuff.
Yes, oh yeah, it's in a full operation.
Oh, good.
Yeah, there's a line there too, but come on over.
Okay.
So Carol, when you go for your tour, they'll give you a free meal.
Yeah, no, you can go over there and buy all kind of good stuff, though.
I did want to share something, if I may. that,
Sure.
We've had Howard and I have had conversations about the philosophical structure of the school. This is a communication I received on March 20th. This is a separate foundation, which happens to be based in the district in Hopedale. And they've offered conditional $18,000 worth of scholarships, okay, to our students. But their condition is that the student, in this case, has to be from that town. That's okay.
Sure.
In Uxbridge, it could be the Polish Club, in Milford, it could be the Italian Club, whatever it is, whatever the rules are, so that our kids still have a fair opportunity to apply for these things. But in this case, the conditions of the scholarship say that the student must go to college to pursue a trade. So this is an example of the new direction the economy is. I brought that for you. Okay, so it's just the direction that things are. And what's happening today is not a linear direction of the trade of years ago. It's transferable skills, like you cannot believe. And the diversity, the creativity of the way the students are using the skills, taking it in so many different directions. I could give you countless examples, and I never even anticipated. When I go to a place like Southwark Milton, worldwide heavy equipment operation, diesels, monsters, backhoes, and, all kinds of equipment. And I meet a graduate of our cosmetology department who's in their HR department because she's incredible with interacting with customers, and that's what they wanted. And she's a graduate of Johnson & Wales after she left our program.
Huh.
Well, it's interesting to say, well, she went to cosmetology? She's not a cosmetologist? No, she took the skills of that and brought it into a direction of her own. And so, and the people at Southwark Milton, which is, a former Caterpillar operation, said, we'll take every kid you can give us. All right? They don't care what the program is. Just an example of the way it's headed. Very different than when I was a kid.
Things change, right?
They certainly have, yeah.
Did you go to school?
And I
Did
went
you
to
go to-
St. Mary's of Milford.
Oh, you did,
My
okay.
mother felt that I needed a direction at
Okay.
the time. The oldest is 7, and my father was on the was on the finance committee and the school committee in Milford. So,
Anybody else? All right, thanks for coming, you guys. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks, Dr.
Thank you very much.
And, hope your other meetings go well as you carry
I
on.
appreciate that, thank you. And I'll see you at town meeting.
All right, everybody, if you look at your agenda, we have review special articles. So Jean, you, which one are we reviewing? And why are we reviewing it now?
We're trying to get a jump on the April 11th meeting. So these are
Okay.
the articles that are non-budgetary.
So is
I
it basically
have-
Article 11 then?
Yes. So these will appear on the annual town meeting. Matt Benoit and Mr. Sullivan has agreed to stay because he also has one.
I just see,
A lot of lines crossed.
it's just one article, Jean, correct?
No.
Then there's 12 and 13.
Where do you see 12?
The last page. Bottom last page.
Oh, yeah.
Where's the footnote?
Who's going to talk about Article 11? Matt?
That's the fourth one.
So Matt, can you give us context why this is coming up now?
Sure. For the record, Matthew Benoit, Director of Community Development. Saw you all last week. Kind of brushed on this briefly, but happy to talk more about it. Long and the short of this is a mandate that's come from the state and the federal government to update our bylaws in order to maintain flood insurance for the community. This has affected 14 cities and towns in the Quinnebog Watershed District, and we are one of them. So the other 13 towns are making these very similar changes to their bylaws or adopting a model bylaw altogether. So
So Matt, if you were to, in a sentence, say, the context which is leading to this, would you say the feds and the state are changing something, or what's the engine behind this, I guess?
Is my rate gonna change because I buy flood insurance every year?
I don't think this bylaw has anything to do with personal rates or anything like that.
Okay.
They've updated their maps, and they're updating the language because I guess a lot of their bylaws are being challenged for language and such. But this isn't what our planning board was working on. We were working on some other things, and when this came off and said you have to do this spring town meeting or the town loses flood insurance, we dropped what we were doing and we did this instead.
So is the reason it's happening because the state and/or the feds are updating
It's gonna be
regulations, or
Their
definitely?
maps and just their model template that they want all towns to.
And that's the state and the feds, both?
Yeah, the state, it came from the Department of Conservation and Recreation, the initiative itself, but it's all based off the FEMA maps. we've ever seen.
FEMA. So it's probably, is it the 100-year plan, like, is that what we're going with?
Yeah, but except they haven't given us what the maps are.
Correct, and that's what I'm wondering.
I want to
Because
know, I
our
want to see
rate
the
will
maps.
be
They haven't
big.
given the maps. The second thing, this is a little different than what you sent me.
Oh, it should be exactly.
Oh, no, I see some differences. You know, I read it page,
Well,
word by word.
I'm not sneaking
And,
anything in here. if
one of
that's
the
what you're
things that I
wondering.
see is that I think you're going beyond what we're required to do. And I'll tell you exactly where. Because I only got a chance to look at this just now, so.
Okay.
And let me see where it is. The part about subdivisions, there's no way, what they said, that all subdivisions have to be reviewed.
Okay,
You get that in there.
I didn't add it. I took what the state told me to put in here. I have not
I
put
did
my
not-
personal stamp
I
on
did not
this
see
at all.
all subdivisions in any of the
Where
things
is
that
it,
they wrote.
Carol?
Let me see. Well, like I said, I just got to see, I saw another one before, I read it, I printed it out
Is that the
and,
Newt's construction?
okay, page 2, 8.3.5, number 2, review of all subdivision proposal is required. And it didn't say that in what you sent me from the state.
Please repeat number again, please.
Number, on the second page,
Mhm.
under 8.3.5, go down to paragraph number 2.
Mhm.
It says review of all subdivision proposals is required. It didn't say that in the thing that you sent me that the state had put out, or the feds had put out.
I haven't changed anything on this.
So
New subdivisions going forward.
I don't know
But
what to
it's,
say.
all subdivisions shouldn't have to be reviewed if they're not in the floodplain. If you got
Would they have
sitting
to
up
be
on
reviewed
top
to
of a
determine if
hill,
they're in the flood?
what's that?
That's,
Wouldn't they have to be reviewed to determine if they're in the floodplain?
You look at the map, wouldn't you? It's not in the map, I mean, that's not a full review, I wouldn't say though.
And if that's, if it's only you have to look at the map and you go in, the map doesn't show it, we don't have to do anything else.
Right.
If that's,
Yeah, there's no special permit that has to be applied for as part of this because you're filing
okay,
subdivision.
so you're gonna have to bring in another expert, or spend more time,
Our peer review consultant would determine it.
because I didn't see those exact words in what the state said.
Okay.
And I'm gonna look them over again. You know that I read every word.
I understand. Again, this one's a little different, and I can understand
It is a little
skepticism
different
previously.
than what I got from
but
email from you.
I'm legit following a template from the state, and I send this back to them and town council, and they have to approve it before I even bring it to you.
Well, I told you before, I'm not impressed with what the town council has to say, so.
My hands are a little tied on this, only because, like, the only thing that we had to add that wasn't in the template is to put who the floodplain administrator is and choose a position who's going to administer it. And previously it was the building inspector, and now it's still the building commissioner, so it's the same person. That is the only, like, freedom I had to change anything.
So
Otherwise-
if the state and the feds weren't updating their maps and things, this would not be before us,
Exactly.
correct?
Right. So-
But the state hasn't told us what their maps are.
So their maps are, they sent us 3 maps. And then they sent us a message not too long later saying that the maps they contain an error, excuse me, and we're going to be issuing you more maps in the future, prior to June 21st, the date that they asked us to put on here. So until such time that those maps are issued, this bylaw would reflect whatever maps are current, that being, I think they're the 2011 maps, until the new maps come.
So, go ahead, Carol.
But it seems, if the state wants us to do these things, they should get the maps here so we can see them before we vote on
Right,
it.
because they could change, the floodplain will change.
Yeah.
Right, if
They're
they
going
change
with
the
100.
floodplain,
That-
then
that-
we're locked
that-
into it.
What happens if we all vote no?
Then we lose town flood insurance, townwide.
You need town flood insurance.
So they got you.
You're gonna have to self-fund it.
They
And
should
we
get on
don't
it,
wanna self-fund
get on it and
No,
give us the new
but-
maps.
But it seems like a no-win situation.
To have your vote, Beryl.
That's
It
not.
can be noted at town meeting, though, that we had to do this even though we don't have the new maps.
I am hoping to have an image ready for town meeting. The planning board authorized the use of 3 local planning assistance hours for the CMRPC to create a townwide Douglas map using the pieces of the FEMA maps that were provided. It's probably going to create that using the maps that have an error in them for now, and then have to update them when we get the new ones. But just so there's imagery up on the screen during town meeting, I intend on doing that. But
But with a disclosure vote, right?
right.
Matt, what's the general theme describing all the strike-throughs?
Just so you can see what the changes were.
But what are the changes substantively? I mean,
Mostly definitions.
Okay.
They wanted to do away with a ton of definitions, and they wanted us to remove any old definitions that weren't in the new template.
so the new template has its own definitions?
Correct.
And this just gets rid of the old ones?
Correct.
So the strikeouts are of older language, correct?
And in the first couple of pages, they used to list the maps by their code, and they didn't want us to do that anymore. They just wanted us to cite the date. They also wanted us to remove the reference we had to our 07 map, because it's technically not the official map, it's only a guide, it's not something we should be using as leverage over applicants. The other piece is, I think they talk about, there's addresses in here for the state offices, they want us to remove the addresses. So it's just,
So the strikeouts represent things that are being eliminated because the new template has updated language.
Yes.
Is that correct?
That's correct, yes.
Okay.
I apologize for not providing the template with the package, but we sent this back and forth with DCR maybe 3 or 4 times, and then I finally got their final word long ago, so.
And the citizens care about this because of flood insurance, correct?
Absolutely. And someone asked me, either it was last meeting or I'm getting a little jumbled up, Like if they're changing the zone, does this bylaw impact you? Or I don't know how the state permitting thing works, but I think something came up in Auburn and where someone had a change, but they had to go through a public hearing process at the state level for the change, and they were notified and they were able to find comment at the state level. So if someone's changing an area and your house wasn't in the floodplain, now is for some reason, I believe that's handled at the state level, in case anyone was thinking that question. So I don't know if the maps are changing, I don't know that. So, but the bylaw itself is strictly to maintain flood insurance for this town.
So getting those updated maps is pretty crucial.
These are just going to reference the old maps until those new maps come in.
Did you look at the maps that they sent? They said there was some mistakes, and did you look at it to see how they compared to the old maps? Did you see any difference?
I haven't, I don't know where our old maps are. It's just the CMRPC map, that's not the exact representation of it.
Is there a website you can go to, Matt, to see
Yeah,
a
you can pull up
floodplain
the website.
map of Douglas? I mean,
Try it.
do the feds have one, or?
No.
It's horrendous.
It's really hard to navigate.
It's the
but
world's worst website.
There are quadrants, and they're coded, like you see of the strike sections, it's a 11-digit code with letters and numbers.
Okay.
And you have to find it based on that.
Yeah,
It's-
try to find
it's
your
very frustrating.
your thing. It's just horrible.
So that's why I think in the past, the town commissioned CMRPC to create a townwide map, and we're doing that again, because it is very frustrating.
So as a finance committee, we would have an opinion on this because it affects the financial well-being of our citizens vis-à-vis flood insurance, correct? And if this did not pass at the town meeting, that would jeopardize our fellow citizens' ability to get flood insurance?
No.
Okay.
No, it's just the town's flood insurance.
Oh, the town flood insurance,
We have to
okay.
self-pay.
Not your own flood insurance?
Correct.
Okay.
Your own flood insurance is gonna be affected by this,
Right.
no matter how the town votes.
Right.
So
And no matter what the maps, when you get them or when you don't get them.
how much
Okay.
of the town is in the floodplain? How much of the town that what flood insurances do we have?
I don't know the answer to that.
I'd be interested in knowing that.
So town.
If we're paying
insurance, yeah.
flood insurance, what are we insuring? I didn't
What
see anything in
parcels,
the
what
budget for
building?
flood insurance.
I would assume that we have some town property in the floodplain. It's just some of the properties that I've walked. I don't know if those have structures in it or not.
What, we have structures? You think we have structures in the
I'm
floodplain?
not sure,
I'd like to know that.
but one way or the other.
Probably the
The wastewater plant is. within the
wastewater plant.
floodplain, yeah.
So are we insured for the wastewater plant?
Maybe some of the wells off the street.
What?
So I have the floodplains, I don't know about the updated ones,
Yeah.
but, and I can probably get them. But I have a GIS which he's trying to get, so once he gets it, I can share some of those maps with him and the data layers, but you kind of follow from Whiten's Res all the way
Right,
down.
right.
And there's an area around that,
Yeah,
and I'm not sure if they're still calling, I see one thing I just want to make a comment on is, you're still calling it 100-year and 500-year. I know most of the stuff that I've been dealing with FEMA and them on is, they're calling it 1% and 0.2%.
yeah, right.
Because people get in this horrible mentality of 100-year and 500-year, and they say, oh, I think we just had a 100-year event, so we're good
Yeah,
for
right.
90 years.
Yeah,
Correct.
So
Yeah, that's,
it's the percent chance, not
right.
the years, so I don't know. If I'd make the recommendation to maybe put in parentheses there or something, 1% and 0.2%, but.
So we're.
I'm at the point where they reviewed and approved it the way it is, and I don't want to mess with what they like.
When someone like is selling their house or something, and the bank comes in and they go, okay, you're gonna have flood insurance. Now, at one point, okay, we're gonna use 1% and 2%, thinking it was the old 1 in 500, and I understand why you're not saying that. But are they gonna, these maps, are they referencing now the 500 or the 2% or?
They've had the 500s on there.
Right.
All
But
along.
are they gonna be, what if they're gonna be requiring flood insurance in the 500 or the 2%?
I think it depends on their system. I just know from me,
Yeah,
I'm quote unquote not in, but I'm surrounded by, I'm on Charles Street, so.
Oh, right.
But I'm high enough up.
right.
I don't have to have it. I choose to have it just because I've lived in places, Grand Forks, North Dakota, that flooded, Red River.
Yeah.
I always will have flood insurance.
Oh, really?
It's a self-insurance for me.
Right, yeah. Just so you know, because
Yeah.
we did bring up that we're in the floodplain.
Yeah.
The treatment plant, when it was designed and the upgrades were done in 2004, those floodplains were taken into account and the structures were built, like the treatment plant itself, at the elevation to be above that So it should not be affected.
Unless they've changed. Yeah, right.
So Matt, do you anticipate this is the wording that will pretty much go to the town meeting then? Okay.
Yeah, the planning board already held their public hearing last week. They did not recommend any changes, unanimous support.
Okay. Any more questions for Matt, anybody? Are you talking about Article 12 or 13? Or are you, Bob?
I'm 13.
Matt, you're 12?
I think so. Which one is that?
Cobblestone Lane and Meeting House Lane?
So,
What's the context of this?
These are the two leftover pieces from a subdivision called Stonegate Development. A majority of Stonegate Development, which was built by Kevin Rafferty in the 2010s and on, up until 2018. Stonegate's Road, most of the loop is already accepted. The last two pieces that need to be built were the extension of Cobblestone Way and Meeting House Lane, two cul-de-sacs left over. I believe Mr. Rafferty passed away at some point between 2018 and today, and it's his son who's trying to get this closed out. We have had the peer review consultant already look at it. They made some recommendations for some things that needed to be fixed. Those changes were made. Our consultant has signed off on it back in last summer. And then this was introduced to the town meeting floor in September, hoping to get on for the fall warrant, but our general bylaws said that we don't accept roads in the fall, so here it is in the spring. Happy to answer any questions about it. The things that needed to be repaired were there were a couple of bounds that were missing, so those were installed. There was a seal between pavement of the unfinished portion and the accepted portion that had to be sealed. They did that. And they also had to do a bunch of routine landscape maintenance on the stormwater basins. Were all completed.
Did they have a construction bond outstanding?
That is part of the reason for the request. They would like their bond released once the roads accepted.
Okay. Planning board is good with?
Yes, they voted unanimously to support this article.
Okay. Any questions on that, anybody? And then, Bob, are you Article 13?
Yes.
So what's the background to this?
So this is similar to the one that I did last year. Last year I secured a grant through the state to fund the wastewater asset management project. So this is something that we have engineers come in, they're gonna evaluate all of our assets on the water portion of this. We did the wastewater, we're actually in the middle of it, but we did get the grant, so, and we were approved for the grant this year for this one. We just need to get this past the town meeting. So what it is, it's about a $140,000 project. The state's gonna give us a grant of $84,000, and then we have to cover the other half between in-kind services, so that's man hours that different people within the town put towards gathering all the data information. And then the other $28,000 is from retained earnings through the water and sewer project.
Any questions on this, anybody?
So for $28,000, we get $140,000 worth of work.
That sounds like good math to me.
Where did you see with getting the 28,000? Did you say retained earnings?
Yeah, the water department's
You
retained.
mean out of your own budget?
Correct.
Okay, so it's not really affecting the town at all?
Correct.
Okay. Well, I just want to make that clear.
Someone's a ratepayer.
Well, I'm a rate, believe me, I'm a ratepayer.
Why does this have to come to the town meeting again, Bob?
Because it's funding and it's acceptance of a grant. Actually, I don't know if we need to go through town meeting for the acceptance of a grant, but.
No, but-
Any funding from the water department and sewer department has to go to town meeting for
Okay.
approval.
Gotcha.
Just remember, you're on the finance committee for the whole town, all of its operations, and not just the general fund budget. You have it all.
But it just, like, people in the town who are not using the town water or the town sewers to know they're
Right.
not paying for this, that's all.
Thank you.
Anybody else, comments or questions? Thank you, guys. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
See you on April 11th.
Matt, how we doing on snow and ice?
No further changes.
So we're good?
So you got my notice, correct?
That was last week or 2 weeks ago? Okay.
No further changes.
So Matt, can you tell us a little bit about how your meeting with the selectmen went on compensation reform and?
So I will. I'm gonna move because I've lost my voice. And
No, you're not gonna
I feel
give
like
us-
shouting from the back. I have enough copies.
Because I think one thing, well, okay, I'll just let you start and then I'll ask you questions later.
Now, given the hour, I'm not gonna go through all 50 slides, obviously.
Yeah.
I want to summarize what's in there.
Give us the bird's eye.
In your own time. At the end of the main portion of the deck, so I'm up page 38, slide that I haven't completely finished yet. It's the summary of the financial impact of the town of the compensation reform. But I think the bottom line number is what a lot of people are curious about. So it's just so that you know what I'm measuring. I am measuring the difference between what the compensation form proposal will cost versus what today's existing system will cost if it stays in place and there's a COLA. So what you're comparing is what an employee would earn in fiscal '24 if they were eligible for a step plus a 2% COLA versus the assignment I'm giving them under a new set of tables. Because if that's not voted, we will still default to the existing tables and pay out that money. So it's that delta that I think is what we need to be most sensitive to. And that delta is $161,000 and change, which is quite a distance below the original target, which is $250,000. Just bear in mind, though, that if you compare fiscal '23 to the compensation reform, it's going to look more like $250,000. Still, that is not a whole lot of additional spending well above and beyond the levy. The levy increase was about 340 grand, right? So we're keeping this within our revenue growth, and the budget will be balanced and it will still show probably a small positive balance, but obviously we'll bring it to zero. But the select board just voted, they took 5 votes. The most important one is they endorsed the plan overall, and they made some minor changes to it. There were a couple of things that I needed them to vote. So the first 2 votes were, we are going to take one of the staff people on the Board of Health who is currently an hourly employee. We're going to upgrade that position to a management position because for the longest time it wasn't really properly accounted for as a management position. There are many inspectors that work for the town and quite a few staff people, both who work in the transfer station and now who work here in this office, who are under the direction of this one employee. And the budget is over $350,000. It's one of the biggest vendor relationships we have in town is with our trash hauler. So clearly that person really is not an hourly person, they're a management person. But because that's a very expensive decision, we're gonna pull that person's salary out of the transfer station budget so it doesn't affect the cost of stickers. Then we're gonna take the part-time office assistant who works 14 hours a week and put her salary, and she does a lot with the transfer station, put her salary over to the transfer station. So the select board voted 2 separate votes. One to take all of Kristen's time and put it into the general fund budget, take all of Julie's time and put it into the transfer station enterprise fund. So that 2 of the 5 votes, 2 of the 6 votes.
I'm sorry, was Kristen's previous time part of the general fund, or was it part of the?
It was split. So she had 30 hours, she scored 19 hours here, 11 hours over there.
Okay.
So I'm gonna take we actually upgrade her to 33 hours and bring all 33 hours to this function. They voted to increase the salary of the economic development facilitator. So that goes from an M1 step 5 to M1 step 25. They left it within M1, so that is basically a performance evaluation based merit increase for the employee. And the same for the building commissioner. The view was that he shouldn't be at step 5, he should be at step 10, so those 2 additional votes. And how am I doing? That's 5. Whatever the other one was, it was not a lot of dollars. It was more about where somebody was resigning. I'll get my deck. But to go through the deck really quickly,
Point of order, Mr. Chairman?
Yeah, go ahead.
When's the next time we're meeting?
The 11th.
Is there any need for further detail from the town administrator tonight that can't be discussed more thoroughly on the 11th?
Well, that's what I wanted to get a sense of the group. So we have from Matt a big document, but all the department heads have looked at this, Matt, right? And all their employees and so on. And the select board has looked at it, so.
Well, what is that, at this point, this is the Board of Selectmen's personnel compensation budget request to the Finance Committee.
Okay.
So at this point, it's been fully vetted by virtually everyone 1,000 times.
Right.
Over.
Yep. Yeah. What's your sense of what we should do, Howard?
My sense is it might be useful to have the town administrator be able to wrap up quickly tonight.
Yeah.
Go home, and we can cover more thoroughly when he's got more of a comfort level and a capacity to give us more detailed information in just 2 weeks.
Yeah, and I think it's crucial that all the major players have weighed in on this already, correct?
Right.
So, thank you for being thoughtful. It is easier to not speak so much. Much of the document is self-explanatory, so a lot of what's here is methodology. And there are slides where I disclose, you know, the difference between the grades and the difference between the steps and why we made those changes. And then it arranges all of the different job descriptions. They were all reviewed and scored by a team of 5 people. So it's myself and Jean and Cheryl Vadia, our treasurer collector, Lisa Freeman, who's the assistant in the select board's office, and Holly Cotnoir, who's very involved with payroll and benefit administration. We're looking to upgrade her position to HR, form an HR role. So the 5 of us scored all these things and placed them on the table. And then we put people into steps based on 2 things. One, how long they've been in the position they're in. And then secondly, there were some evaluations around merit to accelerate people's position within the step system. The result is a very competitive system that we can now go out to the marketplace and not be fighting against the tide or having offer somebody step 5 or step 10 just to get them to apply. We want them to apply at step 1 and make their career here, unless they're an experienced hire, in which case we might do something. But for the most part, this is a much stronger setup than we had.
So Matt, if I could just stop you for a sec. So what would you think, everybody, of, so far we have nothing scheduled for April 4, which is what we had talked about a while ago. We could meet on the 4th if you want, but that's also the night the selectmen are going over the warrant, I think, right? And I want to be there for that, partly because we're going to be doing the same thing the next week on the 11th. So what would you think of if we just read this over, as we have opportunity, and when we meet on the 11th, before we go over the town warrant in a public forum, we'll hear from the Capitol. They were on our agenda for tonight, but they still are waiting for some numbers to come in. And Matt would be available for questions on this.
I make a motion to do that.
Would that be okay with everybody? So we wouldn't meet on the 4th. And if you want to go to the selectmen meeting, of course you can. But then on the 11th, we do Capitol, questions for Matt, and then we go through the warrant and just see what comes from our discussion of that.
Can I
Carol,
ask,
does that
can
sound
I ask
doable?
one question on this new, and I haven't really gotten into it too much, this new compensation table. Before, I know they had steps, and they didn't have anything to do with what kind of a job you were doing. If you were there, the next year you got a step. This new thing, that will people be evaluated, and will they get raises based upon their performance?
So,
Or will they just automatically get them?
so the system is built to accommodate the failings of the prior system. The prior system was actually designed to be merit,
Right, but it never was.
but it never was.
Right,
Because
right.
evaluations were not done.
Right,
So then the only way to make any sense of it was to give somebody a step every year because they were still here.
right.
There's a concept there that does have value. Longevity and experience does add value to the town. What I've done is I've stretched it out so that you don't get a step every year. You might get a step in 5 years. If you've been here for more than 5 years, you have to wait 5 years in between steps. Unless your manager says you really kicked it in the pants. So instead of being a step 5, you're a step 10. Or instead of being year 5 in your trajectory, I'm just gonna upgrade your schedule. So now you're basically in year 8. So instead of waiting 5 years, you wait 2. And then, the key is though, everybody has to do their evaluations. And we've started to get into a healthy cycle now, but it's absolutely essential that the board evaluate the town administrator every year the way they're supposed to. Because that's what sets the tone for everyone else to get their evaluation at every level, is that the board itself is their one appointee, that they're following what they're supposed to. So I'm gonna do my part. They've evaluated me. I'm gonna do my part and try to get my department heads done in the near future. One of the things about the past system, and I won't talk for much longer, is that there wasn't really a good scoring system, and I've worked really hard to put one in place that is more reflective of the full range of management skills that you're required to do in this day and age. And that's what it needs to be. It can't just be, oh, I like the way you really took that corner nice the other day. I mean, it's got to be a little bit more thoughtful than that, and showing up. I mean, that stuff is all bare minimum. We've got to get to the nitty-gritty of what makes somebody successful. I only have 2 talking points on this, and I will be very quick about them. One is, for me, the emphasis was about getting the majority of the funds, the new funds, in the hands of people who are hourly employees and not management. So this is very heavily tilted towards our hourly employees, either by promoting them up to management positions where they belonged or by giving them raises. So of the 161,000, only about 23,000 is going to a management level person. Everything else is going to an hourly. If you look at it on a department basis, almost a little bit less than half of these funds are going to the highway department. The one group of positions that is not covered here is because they have unionized and they are bargaining with us, so they don't come into the tables, is our dispatchers. And right out of the gate in the budget, there's a 6% year-over-year increase for dispatchers because they're way behind. But as between highway and public safety communicators, that's going to be the lion's share of the change in the personnel budget for the whole town.
So Matt,
That's it.
on the control panel, it's showing a surplus of 48 and change. And that includes this new compensation table.
No, they just voted.
Oh, so that number could change then.
There's some flat numbers in there.
No, so most of this is in the budget already.
Okay.
The things that were changed by a vote tonight, I just walked from there to here. I haven't updated
Oh,
the
gotcha,
spreadsheet.
okay.
So you're looking more like 20
Okay.
in the black.
But we're still in the black.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
I think that's going to close up pretty quick.
Okay. Questions, Sandy, or not?
Yeah, so if we're talking about meeting, can we put this on the agenda after we've had time to like look at it? So when we're talking about the agenda for the next meeting, this
So-
will be an item on there.
Yep, on the 11th, yeah.
Yes, okay.
And you'll have your voice back, maybe, Matt.
Yeah.
But the idea is on the 11th, everybody, is just questions for Matt.
Yeah.
Yes.
Based
A more
on,
robust discussion now.
yeah. Ryan, questions?
Are you open to questions beforehand? Just, I'm a little concerned about the time frame, right? You're gonna have questions, and then we're gonna have to vote whether we approve it or not that night. Right?
I have
As part of
always
the
suggested
question.
this, because it is not a violation of open meetings.
Okay.
It is only a violation of open meetings if a quorum of the group deliberates on a matter that might be before you. So the proper way to handle questions is the best thing to do is to not email me, email Lisa Freeman, who will gather the questions.
Okay.
I will answer the questions and submit a report to you as part of your packet for your meeting.
Okay.
And then everybody gets the same information at the same time, but nobody is commenting back. There's no emails, there's no deliberation at all. It's safe, safe, safe. You're just getting the answers to your questions. The chances are, if you've thought of it, somebody else on the finance committee also wants that answer.
Well, the other thing is you can watch the Board of Selectmen meeting tonight. He just did a full presentation, so you'll be able to see what he would have presented to you. and then.
I missed you last week, so you didn't get that middle step update.
I have a question, an open meeting, not want to do the wrong thing or anything. If he sends an email to you asking a question, is it all right if we're all like, get that same email so we know what he asked you and we know what you answered
So
back?
that's what I'm
As long as
saying.
we don't say anything to each other.
Lisa's right. Don't say anything to
Don't
each
say-
other.
don't-
but what-
don't- we don't respond to it.
That's the key.
But we can see it.
You can see it, you just can't
Can you go
respond
through
to it.
Lisa? That's the key.
Yeah, and,
So she's gonna gather all that stuff
Right,
up onto a
okay.
list.
so Brian's gonna say, we're gonna open the town hall now at 9 AM or something, something stupid like that. We're all gonna hear it.
Jeez, Ryan, you didn't even say it.
I made that up. And then you're gonna say, no,
Tough going on here,
it's staying at
Carol.
8:30. So, but as long as I don't say, I think it should stay at 9 o'clock, or something.
Right.
As long as we don't say anything, we're not in any trouble with the
That's
open
the
meeting
key.
law. We can read it, but we just can't talk about it
That's
amongst
the
us.
key.
Right.
Don't
Right.
reply.
We
Don't
can't hit
reply.
reply.
Okay.
If Ryan asks, can we
Right.
open at 9?
Yeah.
You can send a separate email to the group and say, why is the flag at half-staff tonight?
Yeah,
You
right,
know?
okay,
But different topic, don't hit reply all.
okay,
You
got
know.
it, got it.
Let's meet for lunch.
Yeah.
To discuss
Yeah.
further.
Yeah, right, discuss this, yeah.
Dick, is that how you want to do it? I was thinking I would just CC you, and then.
No, go to Lisa,
Right, I'll send it.
and she'll kick it back to
So the
everybody.
problem
Okay.
for him is that he ends up with a rolling quorum almost. And as a
Right.
member of the
So
board, he
just,
would.
but
yeah.
Carol suggested I CC everyone on my questions, so Lisa.
Yeah, I'd like to know what you ask.
No, you're gonna get it all at once when you get
So
to
if you have a
You
question,
get the answers.
you have a question, Carol,
Only the
you're
answer
everybody's
comes back from
email
you, it'll go
separately,
to
though.
all of us?
from
Yes.
Lisa.
Yes.
Okay,
That's
that's
probably
good.
Yeah, because if
Same
more than one
question.
person asks the
Okay.
same question, it's going to Lisa, she's gonna filter out
Right,
the same
right.
question.
And will
so
that be on the
you know.
website?
So when it comes back, we'll get both the question and the answer, but come back
I think
from
it'll be an
Lisa.
email from her.
An
From
email.
Lisa.
It'll be,
Okay,
it'll
sounds
be
good.
like
It'll be
a
part of
meeting
your packet
packet.
for-
Yeah.
There's a document with the answers
Okay.
in it.
Yeah. Any other questions
And that
from
will be
Matt
on
at
the
this
11th.
point?
I just have a quick
Okay, go ahead.
updates, Mr. Chairman, if I could. I just want everybody's expectations to be, this was kind of necessary to get to the final product. So I'm hoping Gene has some time this week. I'd like to QA/QC the budget. I'm gonna write a budget message and I want all of this off my plate by lunchtime on Friday. So the
Well, I'm on
budget-
Friday, so it'd have to be Thursday.
Thursday. Well, you can give me your answers and I'll write them up nicey nice by Friday noon, but it's time to put the thing to bed. I just told the selectman, budget's screaming and it's colicky and he really needs to go to bed. But I, just by way of the highlights, there are no major pitfalls here. The BVT number is very manageable. Health insurance, the Insurance Advisory Commission, Committee approved a 0 today, so there's a 0. The major moving parts are all established. This was like a $35,000 change tonight. So that's the level that we're at. We're just putting together all the details, making sure the spreadsheets are all picking up everything that everybody's asked for. It's pretty important. But at this point, everyone submitted their expenses to me. Comp reform means that the personnel piece is done, so it's pretty much done.
So let's just be in agreement then, if, as you look over this in the next couple of weeks, if you have any questions about it, email Lisa. She'll get the answers from Matt, send the things back to all of us so we can know what everybody's talking about. And then when we meet on the 11th, if you still have questions for Matt in person, you'll be available for that. And then we'll also do the capital, and then we'll look at the warrant.
Yeah, so the last comment I had is about capital.
Yeah.
It's a little bit more involved this year because we believe that when we go to fall town meeting this year, we will probably have conceptual design done for a highway barn. And what we'd be seeking from town meeting is funding. So basically, the issuance of general obligation debt to fund that project, which of course means that we're going to enter the bond rating process, get our credit rating as a town. So, been very cautious about what we tell the capital committee they have to spend out of free cash, because we don't want the free cash balance, which is in a very healthy position, to dip so far below the threshold on the scorecard that this year's replenishment won't take us back above it. So we had good conversation this afternoon about where that might be. I think we're gonna zero in on a capital budget, very, very soon. I think we kind of already know what the number is. But I wanna sort of scientifically now document what we know is coming in form of a building permit or where we stand with revenues versus budgeted revenues. So we're gonna have unanticipated revenues, insurance settlements, other things that close to free cash, so that when we go into this rating decision, we'll have the same level of strength we have today, which should kick us. This is, it's meaningful to a point, right? So the difference between the bond rating we have right now with Standard, with Moody's, and the highest possible rating that you could get is about 600 basis points. So across all ratings, the average is about 4.5%, which is more expensive money than we've gotten in the past. So if we were downgraded, or if we were at one notch below AAA, we'd be at 4.2. And right now we'd be, I mean, not 4.2, 4.8. So you see where I'm going with it. It's worth it if we have a project that is big enough that it includes perhaps both water and wastewater components to bring utilities to a new building that will cost X. So it'll be X plus Y would be the issuance. If that number is big enough and the term is short enough, obviously that interest rate is going to matter quite a bit. So we want to be in the right position. Don't want to put the town too much interest rate risk.
Right. So I guess what you're saying is you don't want capital to spend any money. Is that
no, I want them to spend an appropriate amount so that we know we're going to...
Not too much.
We're going to put the jelly beans back in the bowl after we
don't drain too much out of the well that you can't replenish it.
We don't want to look weaker than we are.
Okay, got it.
Questions for Matt, anybody? All right, Matt, thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Have a great night. Safely.
All right, let's, so we look at our agenda, everybody. We've got no meeting on April 4 for us, but that's selectmen, right? And Matt, the selectmen will go over the whole warrant on April 4, correct? Okay. And we're gonna go over on April 11, and one thing I'm hoping to do is write up for each warrant article a little context and significance for the town meeting. And the flyer that goes out, the public information thing, is our product. It's a FinCom thing. So I'm hoping when we go over the warrant on the 11th, I can have a rough draft of, like tonight I was asking everybody, you know, what's starting this and why is it significant? But if we can have that for every warrant article, I think that will help the town meeting go smoother. So if some of you want to go to the selectmen next week too, but I'm going to want your help as I write up the first draft, and you guys just give me your advice on how clear it is and so on. So on the 11th, we'll do...
A couple of points.
Brian?
So I'm going to be at the selectmen's meetings on a rec thing as well. So if 5 of us show up, you got to post a meeting?
If we're just spectators?
I think so.
I think you do.
I got to defer to Gene on that
I
one.
believe you do.
Really?
Just to make sure that you're not breaking open
Yeah.
meeting laws, because it could be perceived that we are actually meeting there for a quorum to decide factors.
So, for example, when I talked about the rec commission budget last week, I posted a rec commission meeting. Nobody came, but just in case 2 other members showed up, so we were covered. So
do you think 5 of us will be at the selectmen meeting next week?
I just go to air the safe side. Just
Probably
post
not,
it.
but you know what? It's not, doesn't, it's no
Well, I'll be
problem
there
if
and
you
you'll
do
be
post
there.
it. But it's no problem if you post it.
I will not be there.
Okay. So 2 of us will be there.
Ciao.
So I think only about 2 of us, Gene, will be there, so.
I'm going with Lynn, so.
Okay.
Cher's going to Italy with me next week.
Yeah, you'll be gone on the 11th, right, Lynn?
I'm leaving next Tuesday, so I'll be gone Tuesday and the following.
You'll leave it
Tuesday.
there, Chief, huh?
Yeah.
Arrivederci.
Okay, so we have any reserve fund transfers, Gene?
We don't, but can I review the agenda for the 11th again?
You may.
So we're gonna go capital.
Yep.
You're gonna do a short presentation of comp reform. Everybody's gonna watch the selectmen's meeting. So they have those base questions.
Well, it'll be on the agenda for people to ask questions of me.
Right, but I think it will be important to watch their meeting tonight, because that's the sole
Oh, I
purpose of that
see.
meeting.
Yeah.
It walks you through how he got to where he got and the reason why.
Right, I think he reviewed the whole slide deck. You're gonna have your public hearing on the budget,
Yep.
and then you'll do the warrant, review the FY '24 special town meeting and FY '23 special town meeting, FY '24 annual town meeting.
Now, before that, you said a public hearing on the budget?
Correct.
You still have to do that.
Yeah, so if.
You mean the whole budget?
The whole general fund budget, you have to
Yeah,
hold a
we go
public
through
hearing.
where we
Yeah.
talk about, total highway department, total police.
Oh, I see what you
fire.
mean, yeah, okay.
We
yeah.
go through all of that and,
Did you say
yeah, make
capital?
recommendations. We usually say,
Capital.
we're gonna list all, do not a roll call, but mention all of the total department budgets.
We
And
do
then
it-
we do like if somebody's got questions on it, we say hold, and then we come
Right,
back to
okay.
it at the end.
But it's by department, though?
Yeah, we go through by department and then the total.
Yeah.
So it's wages, expense.
Exactly, yes.
Reserve fund transfers, I don't anticipate any.
So in terms of the 11th, Gene, I'm looking at the spreadsheet right now. And all these departments have numbers. Like police is 210, fire is whatever. But does everything that has a number have to be said orally on the 11th?
Well, and you'll have the annual town meeting warrant. So
Okay.
it'll just see selectmen wages, selectmen expense. It won't have a number, and it'll be by total, subtotal.
So whatever's on the warrant is how we're going to do it
Correct.
on the 11th?
Correct, you won't be going by that spreadsheet.
Okay. 'Cause
You're
that
going
means-
as presented to town meeting.
Yeah, okay.
Um,
So we'll have that beforehand then?
You will, actually, you'll have the warrants right around the 4th, because you'll have them at the same time the selectmen has theirs.
Okay. I'll send you a copy of the agenda too, in case I missed something. Okay. All right, anything else, Gene, for the group? I don't think we're gonna have any more snow and ice, but I probably just jinxed it, right?
Don't say that.
We're getting like an April 10th.
I just ruined it.
6-inch snowstorm now.
We had April
Nice
1st.
job, Dick.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
The next
Just
3
jinxed us.
Mondays, boom.
Well,
Yeah.
but you could easily,
And Mike brought up COVID again with the nurse, I don't know.
you could easily get an ice storm.
We remember the May
We
snowstorm,
did
right?
have a May when we had April
We did?
Fool's one.
Yeah, or the
I
April
know when I
Fool's
moved
one.
to
Yeah, I remember
Town
the April one where
26 years
tax deadlines
ago.
got extended,
It
that's
was
when I was working.
April
the
1st, and
CPA
there
firm,
was
and,
like
we're extending
3
to
feet
April
of snow.
18th, because we got a foot of snow on the 13th or something.
All right, anybody have anything? All right, motion to adjourn, anybody?
Moved.
Mike, was that you?
So moved.
Yes.
Okay, seconded by
I'll second it.
Carol. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? We adjourn at 9:05.
Okay.